This is What's Up with Startups, and my guest today is Boris Bekkering from Regreener. And good to have you here. And when I learned you're working on carbon offset market, I was really excited because I was also investigating at that time possibilities, what can be done. It was like very rapidly growing market beginning of 2023. And then I went to Conference of the Parties in Dubai in November, end of November, beginning of December. And I was in the panel for this carbon offsets people, from Vera, from what was the other name?
Gold Standard.
Yeah. And there were all of them, and the background was not so fun. I mean, the prices, like, they came down crashing, and there was those huge confidence crisis in the carbon offsets. But at the same time, there was a person from United States Regulatory Commission, like the securities regulator, and he said that, we're actually going to do something about that. We're going to develop a system to allow trading carbon offsets and so on. So for those of you who don't know, could you just briefly, who don't know Regreener, could you just briefly introduce yourself, introduce the business that you are working on, and why is it so important to climate change and combating the climate change?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just a quick personal introduction. I have background in a master's, and that's environment and resource management. After that, I worked in venture capital for a larger Dutch utility, so investing into software-related solutions for the energy transition, and then moved to Regreener, I think about 1.5 years ago. And Regreener is, it's a platform for funding climate projects. That's in short. And what we saw is that there's a lot of companies that are focused on reduction, which is great, which should also be the primary focus of a lot of companies. But then also the question came up, okay, but what do you do with the rest? Because there's always going to be residual emissions. And I think there's two ways of cooperating with us. I think one of the ways in which we collaborate or help companies is with tree planting projects in Europe, in Africa, and South America. That is for individuals, so also B2C, but the majority is focused on businesses that want to make a positive impact. So you can just a one-off plant a couple of trees. You can plant trees per employee, per month, or per sold product. So that is one of the pillars, if you will. Well, the other pillar, what we focus on is, as you already introduced, carbon credits, carbon projects. Businesses map their CO2, they calculate their CO2 emissions on a yearly basis. They make a reduction plan, and then they also want to support a certified project to offset those residual emissions that I just mentioned. And we offer I think curated portfolio is the best word for it, of these certified projects for companies to offset those residual emissions. And those projects can be anything from tree planting to cook stove projects to carbon capture, et cetera. And then there's also additional adjacent online services that we offer. So we developed a tool for compensating your flights. We have a free-to-use tool to calculate your business emissions, scope 1, 2, and a part of 3. And we help with communication around impact through a lot of online tools.
Thanks. Thanks, Boris. And I was doing some research into the scope 1, 2, and 3. I think just briefly for those who maybe don't know. So the scope 1 emissions, correct me if I'm wrong, are the emissions that you generate actually when you're making the product, making a service yourself. Scope 2 includes the electricity that you consume during that, and
yes,
I think some of your suppliers as well. And the scope 3 is everything else which is related to your business, generates emission, including like the consumption of your product or service, or like things like business travel that your staff has, and so on and so forth. And there is an initiative called Science-Based Target Initiative, and I think about 4,000 companies joined that initiative, and like big names like Amazon and Google and Netflix and all the big guys have joined that initiative, and they have guidelines about how do you set those targets and how do you achieve them. So basically, how you become net zero company. And they had a specific point about using carbon credits or carbon offsets, as they call. And they said that at some point it was about, they said, you can use those to offset your Scope 3 emissions. But then, and it was a bit confusing for me. I still do not get it. And then there was an article somewhere on the website that actually, no, you cannot do that. It doesn't count. You have to actually work on really reducing your emissions. Can you elaborate that, explain that?
To be honest, I wish I could, because I'm also a bit puzzled still. What I know of it is that indeed for a long time, SBTI was about the majority of your focus should be on reduction, fully agree. And for, let's say, the last 10% of your emissions, you can use carbon offsets. Yeah. Then I think for a brief period of time, they moved away from offsetting, as you indicated. But now what I have seen is that they've reintegrated the offsetting into their methodology. And I think, but I'm not sure, I would have to look it up, that they've also expanded the bandwidth that you can use for carbon offsetting. So not only focus on the last 10%, but make it also a bit more. But we would have to look that up to be sure there.
That's an interesting time to be in this market.
For a lot of companies, just to add to that, it also makes sense. It's also an economical choice at one point, right? Am I going to make a $2 million investment into a really advanced high-tech machine that requires a lot of expensive fuel, for example, to win 2% emission reduction? Or am I going to support a really nice climate project somewhere, wait for a couple of years before the machine gets a bit cheaper, and then make that investment? So
that trade-off, is that what you had in mind, you and the founders had in mind when they started the Regreener?
So I think that not specifically that trade-off, but what we saw, or what the founders saw, is that there's a couple of companies that offered climate offsetting to their clients. So, for example, KLM, the Dutch airlines, offered you the possibility to offset your ticket. Shell offered you the possibility to offset your gasoline. You can have an opinion about those companies offering those services, but also, and that was the thing that sparked their interest, is the way in which that is being done, this offsetting. It wasn't really transparent. So what is happening with my contribution? Why these projects? Why are we supporting that? And also, I think the second point, it wasn't really accessible to anyone else. So only KLM clients could support these projects. And what we would like to do, or this is also was the vision back then, is also make it accessible for, I would say, as we say in Dutch, for the baker around the corner, right? So any company or person that wants to have a positive impact next to reducing their impact, also make it accessible for them. So that was really the starting point for them.
Okay, but your main clients are businesses, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we do offer both. So you can offset the footprint of your family, of a holiday flight that you take, but our main focus is businesses indeed. Yeah.
And you work mainly with like Netherlands business, so you're based in Amsterdam, right?
We're based in Amsterdam. The majority of our clients are Dutch based, but also quite a lot of international firms already with locations around the world. So we see that expanding now. Yes.
So you are growing, right? And
yes,
this series of interviews I'm doing about like the startups in the energy transition or in climate space, which are growing and which are, because I firmly believe that it's these companies that will make the difference, because all the established businesses, they just really content with business as usual. You know, even they're big, but startups should be the ones, they will be the ones who will disrupt this and who will actually have the greatest impact on the climate change. And I'm really interested about in how you went about growing. I mean, I checked on your LinkedIn that you recently became a B company. And can you elaborate on that? What is it? Why is it important?
Sure. Yeah. Good question. Yeah. What is a B company or B Corp? B Corp is a certification body, and you can become a B Corp if you can prove that you are, let's say, committed to accepting a model that moves away from solely a pure focus on wealth and power creation to really more also social and environmental performance as standards. So, but still, this is for companies. So still companies that pursue profits, right? But next to profits, your views should be wider. Let's put it like that.
And is it a kind of EU wide, or is it Netherlands specific certification?
Sorry, come again?
Is it general to European Union, like a European Union wide certification, or is it Netherlands specific certification?
No, it's a global standard. So it's independent of geography, and any company can start the certification process. But I have to say that the process is quite rigorous. It took us about 1.5 years to become a B Corp. And I think also part of your question was, why is it important for you? Yeah, I think that the whole process of 1.5 years of certification also motivated us really to thoroughly vet our internal stance on, for example, equity, diversity, sustainability, and also improve on certain processes. And I think that goes for a lot of companies that it's more about the road than the goal in that sense. And I think also as a growing company, it's also fair to say it gives potential partners a clear indication of our intentions and workings as a company. So I think it's also fair to say there's a certain marketing value for us there. And that also connects with, I really believe in that in the coming 5 years, in that there are certain companies that, for example, have a B Corp certification or some other form of certification, that certain companies only would want to work with other companies with equal worldviews and internal operations like those. And I hope that really becomes market standard at some point, but we still have a long way to go.
So is it a bit like, because you started with saying that one of the reasons how you identified that niche is that you said that there was no transparency. Is a B Corp certification is a way to increase that transparency, to make other companies, your potential customers, trust you more? Like, okay, these guys, they passed this certification, so it looks like they have their act in order, so they're well behaved, they actually doing things the right way we expect them to do.
Definitely, yes. So I think in the past week we got a lot of messages also from other B Corp companies that congratulated us and said, okay, let's have a chat and let's see what we can where we potentially can cooperate. So I think it's just an initiative to raise the bar in a sense on internal processes and also the way your company operates for a whole industry. Yeah.
So okay, congratulations for that, first of all, achieving that status. And tell me, in growing your business, I mean, you said that you're now starting to have customers not only from Netherlands, from wider world. What was the most challenging hurdle you had to overcome? what's the barrier? I mean, just going from, the sketch on the whiteboard and pitch deck to actually making, getting the first sale, the second sale, but then actually, okay, this is what we need to kind of scale.
Yeah, that's a good question, because there have been quite a lot of challenges, of course. I would say the first thing that comes to mind is it's a bit more high over in a sense, but it was about getting our story straight. That's a bit vague, perhaps, so I should elaborate. So what is the story we tell potential clients? Because what we offer is somewhat intangible, right? And I think the role of storytelling in what we do is really great. And it took a lot of, I think, trial and error for us to get the right tone and also the right message on for example, on our website. So that is the first thing that came to mind. I think a second thing, and that might be a bit more concrete, is perhaps not the most challenging thing, but it was one of the most impactful things for us, is getting our search engine optimization and search engine advertisement right. That was really a big hurdle that we took not so long ago. And I think, everyone knows this, but it is also true. Findability on Google is extremely important these days. And getting the settings right there can be really a stepping stone for a lot of companies. So how do you design your website in such a way that you're always end up as a top result on Google? It sounds really easy, but in fact it was a lengthy process, and it's also we're not there yet. This is continuous. We're still working on that. But there we really saw at one point where we had certain settings that all of a sudden a lot of leads were converging into actual what we call opportunities, right?
Okay, so you are more like a fintech company here. Why I'm asking that is because my main experience, is you remember, is with companies that you doing the hardware and the manufacturing something, making stuff. And that usually takes a long time to set up. I mean, as opposed to software company where you say your biggest hurdle was getting the SEO settings right, which still takes time. But then you didn't need that much capital, right, upfront to do that.
No, but we did do but you're correct. We're more tailored towards like a software platform in that sense. And in terms of capital, we've done a launch round with friends and family and fools, as you say, but then without the fools, that really got us going in the beginning. Work on the concept and test also appetite in the market. It's a really small investment round. And then we found 2 angel investors that helped us with a larger sum. I think it would be fair, to call that an angel investment round. I think that is a year and a half ago that we raised that round already, perhaps a bit longer. And I think we're growing steadily now, but perhaps in the future we're looking also into a something of a more serious investment round, also to allow us to really fund fast growth, right? Hire a bit more people and gather up a bit more speed in that sense.
Coming back to that, this actually tailors nicely into my next question. Because you say you plan to do that. You have this, you have in the steady growth. How was your growth affected by the plunge that happened in the market, like towards the end of the year? Let me even do a little demonstration here. Probably saw that. I'm just sharing my screen for a second.
Yes.
Yeah, you see that's an article from The Economist. I think you see that here, right?
I can see it.
Yeah, and there's a graph which just says that the price per ton of nature-based carbon offset. Nature-based carbon offset, what I think your company most involved in, it's the planting of trees, basically, the forests and so on. They dropped spectacularly to even less than $1. I think they even said 2 years ago to just 10 cents per ton after the meeting in Dubai. So how did you did that affect your business, or did it affect it at all? And how did you react to it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I agree with this view of the economist that the global market has been declining for the past years, but we haven't noticed this, and I think that's purely for the fact that attention also for making positive impact as a company has also grown in the Netherlands. And yeah, looking at the pricing graph, I think it's average price for nature-based solutions that we're looking at. I think there's a clear. It's good to make a clear distinction in the market in terms of quality of credits and projects that are out there. We tend to focus on projects that are of higher quality, and therefore also I think for those projects prices have been quite stable. I think what the article refers to, I haven't read it, but I know what it is about is more about projects that were around conserving rainforests. Really specific, but that is something we don't offer to our clients. There has been some backlash in the industry from a certain supplier of those, because a certain supplier of those credits used calculation methods that were a bit too optimistic. Let's put it like that, and that really caused the whole market for those type of credits to go down. And I think in some way it's also good because we come from a situation where carbon offsets are really cheap as well. There's also, for example, the options to buy offsets from a hydro dam somewhere. Those credits are often really cheap, and I think this is a whole a reset of the market, also allowing us to refocus on the higher quality projects, and also with those prices. So just in short, we haven't really noticed this decline in the market in terms of demand, and in terms of supply. So what type of projects are out there? I only think this is a positive thing because it's really a reboot on, okay, what are we doing with these credits and what type of projects are we actually going to find buyers for? So I think it's a reallocation of funds also in a sense that more funds will be available for the higher credits that really remain their high prices, and then the low quality is we can get rid of it.
What is the high quality project in your view?
Yeah, I think reforestation projects that don't just purely focus on CO2 impact, but also look at biodiversity impact and socioeconomic impact. So,
measure. I mean,
excuse me?
These are hard to measure. I mean, the CO2 impact you could kind of, estimate statistically. If you do the bank growth, you probably, more or less, a certain degree of confidence how much CO2 that they will take out of the atmosphere. Exactly. Biodiversity is harder to judge. You need time, and then you need, ornithologists or someone else to kind of verify that, birds that came back, wolves came back, whoever, fish came back. But then the human impact, human social impact is even more, it's even harder to quantify. How you work with that as a business, and because this is one of the things I understand you sell to your customers. Yeah. This is a very nice project. It helped people somewhere, like in Nigeria, for example, or somewhere that they are now living better off. I mean, you cannot just show like pictures of happy people.
No, and I think it's good that there's more to it. I think in terms of biodiversity impact and also socioeconomic impact, you're right. It's harder to just put them into numbers straight away. But I think it's really important to look at the initiatives, the inputs of the project in that sense, because you can get you can do a comparison between a project that has, for example, is just focused on planting trees, and in project documentation is only focused on which trees are being planted, etc., etc. Or also, on the other side, a project that has a view for the impact of the project on already existing habitat, for example, of wildlife. That is one. I think in terms of socioeconomic impact, it's more or less the same. You can look at, okay, how many local communities are involved in this project? What does it do in terms of employment? Right? How many hours of employment are created? There's a project that we support that I really like, that has, for example, it's a reforestation project. But then they also hire or they train and hire a local fire department. Right? They set this up to respond quickly to forest fires. So it's really it's hard to really put it into concrete numbers, but I think there are a lot of variables that you can identify to separate a great project that truly has focus for socioeconomic and biodiversity impacts from projects that merely say they do, and then they can't really motivate those claims.
That kind of audit, that kind of verification, I know that companies like the platforms like Vera or Gold Standard, they kind of supposed to do that verification. But
yes.
As far as my knowledge of such mechanism goes, this is usually a desk study. So that's, they verify it by the papers that they're given.
Yeah.
But then do you have any extra effort? Do you invest any extra effort, funds? I mean, maybe I would imagine even maybe significant amount of your costs would be to actually go to verifying these projects, which would make, like, if you transfer that to dollars per ton of CO2, which you sell to your customers, if that's what you do, then that would also add not $1 or $2, maybe even a couple.
Yeah.
So you do that or you don't?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think you're correct that in a sense, Vera, Gold Standard, you can name them in some cases desk studies. Also in other cases, you can tell that they visited the project location and there's more to it. So I think that's a first. Then I think a second thing that you also mentioned is, yes, indeed, we do make a large investment of dollars or our time, if you will, into researching the project, right? Interviewing, doing online research about these projects. Really big investment on our side. And then as option, as a third, gatekeeping option, if you will, there's also, again, third parties out there that provide services in terms of project vetting. So if, for example, a client wants to have even more a confirmation of a project that is actually really achieving the goals that it has been set out to do, they can also take aboard a third party project vetting company in that way.
Yeah. Okay. So I understand that, just shifting gears a little bit here. Mm-hmm. I understand that for the projects like reforestation, I mean, if planted trees, there's the only way for you to monetize that is to sell carbon offsets, right? There are not many other ways you can monetize that product, that service, that project, right?
Yes, we do also do direct contributions to reforestation projects. So that was
how is that different from offsetting?
Yeah, so these projects, so two pillars. One, let's put it like this, not certified projects, direct contribution. And the second pillar is certified carbon projects. So there you make the contribution to project via a carbon credit. And on the first pillar, it's directly to the projects. So that is also a big chunk of what we do is fund a lot of great reforestation projects, but also other climate projects. For example, project around protecting coral reefs, or getting plastic out of the ocean, and make direct contributions. There we have metrics of a certain contribution matches a tree planted or a square meter of coral preserved or transplanted. And yeah, how do you monetize that? We use metrics like with this contribution is equal to a tree planted in this or that product. And we try and give it a bit more body, if you will, via our online profiles. So every customer that works with us gets an online profile. There they can find more background around the projects that they have supported, and also share the impact that they've made with clients or suppliers or their colleagues, for example.
Just you run the company knowledge, because this sounds to me like a charity, like an NGO project, but you specifically mentioned on your website that Regreener is a business.
Yes.
So I can understand that when you buy and sell carbon offsets, or you make carbon offsets and sell them, that's perfectly legitimate business. I mean, the legitimate business here, you have costs, you have income, you have your profit. But for the direct contribution projects, how is that treated? Maybe I know we're going a little bit, too much maybe details here, accounting wise, but the nature, I think it's important and interesting, because the nature of the business that you are in, the way you are certified as a B Corp. So when you have a company which runs as a business, but actually is doing good.
Yes, correct.
Before I worked in the NGO myself. So we just do good. I mean, we just, we live off grants and that's it. And whatever we do, it's just free. We report to tax authorities that we get so much funds, we spend so much, that's it. So how you treat the direct contribution as a business?
It's an interesting point you make, Emin. This is really when we found Regreener, was really one of the principles that we thought of, that we said, okay, climate action really should be taken out of the corner, let's put it like that, of charities, NGOs, etc., and we should really bring it to the business side of things. And in a sense, it's always interesting that people often think that you cannot really make money with doing something good, and we really want to also fight that. And also in terms of acquiring talent, etc., we thought, no, we want to do this as a business. Now, specifically as to your question, how do we treat these direct contributions? On the one side, you have great climate projects that we source, and via our platform, you can support these projects, and we take a small margin for the services that we offer in terms of the insights that we provide. Right, the online insights, what's happening with your contribution. We write updates about the project. We provide you with a lot of information, etc., etc. And then also the whole process of sourcing these projects, picking the right ones, making sure that it's actually projects that make an impact. That's where our margin comes from. But we also always make a pledge that a certain percentage of your contribution actually ends up with the project. And we're also quite transparent about this. So on our website, we have a transparency page where you can find all the receipts, in that sense, the receipts of the donations we did for our clients to these projects on a monthly basis. And also quite detailed in for example, this many trees have been planted, but also this many trees are still waiting to be planted. So we really want to create that insight there.
Oh, thanks a lot here. And I also saw on your website that some of the projects you invest in, for example, there's a project in Mongolia that you support, and it's wind farm project. I'm linking here into energy transition, which is the macro topic of New Energy Advancement Hub, which is hosting our talk. And they and we speak about energy transition in very, very broad sense. And while reforestation is not exactly energy transition. It's climate change and biodiversity, and which I also think is really important. But sort of grounding more in our energy side of business. How do you view energy projects? Because one of the controversies about carbon offsets and energy projects is that nowadays most of energy projects do generate revenue. And that revenue is oftentimes sufficient not only to cover costs, but also to make their investments quite decent returns.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think this all comes down to the term additionality.
Mm-hmm.
We think that, and often it's always when you see a verified carbon standard, gold standard certified projects, the topic of additionality is really important. So, is the sale of the carbon credit actually generating the financial push that the project needs to be financially viable? And that's, I think, a really important topic. And that is also why we often get questions: can we fund wind turbine projects in the North Sea in front of the Dutch coast? Well, no, not via us, because those projects are going to be there anyway, right? With or without subsidy, they are financially viable. So we only want to focus on those projects that need the extra financial incentive from the sale of carbon credits to be able to run. And I think you're correct. The project in Mongolia that you refer to is a bit of a I think it's already a couple of years old. One of the initial wind projects in Mongolia that really needed the financial incentive. But I think in the future, also with the LCOE of renewables coming down around the world, I think the need for carbon credits in renewables is going to be diminishing, and eventually it's going to go away in that sense, I think.
So when you just let me make it like crystal clear here. So when you speak about additionality of the renewable energy projects, first of all, additionality means that without carbon credit, we wouldn't be able to build that project. Does
Yes.
that also means that maybe it's okay not to build that project, or if you build that project, it really doesn't make a big impact unless it kind of displaces some of the fossil fuel generation, which there is.
Yes, I think it's always important to compare the baseline scenario, the with or without the project. Compare those two. So indeed, it should replace a certain. Well, I think in Mongolia, it's fair to say that it would be a gas-fired electricity power plant. I'm not sure.
I would even say coal. Mongolia is really big on coal,
Okay.
and we have a lot of coal generation.
Yeah. Okay. Correct. Well, a coal-fired power plant in that sense. So I think that's really important to compare those. Could you repeat the question, please, Emin? I lost it.
I mean, I actually want to like even paraphrase it as an additional example. I was currently investigating Georgia power market. So Georgia power market is interesting in that it's quite green power. I mean, the energy that's produced in Georgia is 80% hydro, and there is about a gigawatt of combined heat and power generation. I think mostly gas fired, and about 3 gigawatts of hydro. But that accounts on like 25% of consumption, 20% of consumption of Georgia. The rest they get from Azerbaijan, Russia.
Yeah.
And would be nice, and the prices are quite low. I mean, if you have a lot of hydro, you get very low prices. So incentives to build like wind or solar are really small. And then especially because those are intermittent, you have to work with them. You really just want to build like a big coal-fired power station, just to keep the lights on in winter and be a bit of energy independent from Russia or from Azerbaijan. In that sense, have more control over your energy as a country. But then you're trying to, become a European country. You're trying to become part of the EU in the end, and then you have to follow all that. And then would it be? I mean, say I come to you as a project developer and say, look, I have this very nice 100 megawatt, 200 megawatt wind turbine, wind park in Georgia, which I want to build, but the prices are so low. I mean, I really need, and I show the like the statistics, the regulator, which gives me like 3 cents per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
And so, well, can I issue like, carbon offsets for that? And I mean, I will displace this 100 megawatt, will displace the 100 megawatt that we import from coal-fired plants from Russia or from Azerbaijan, for example. Would that qualify?
I think in theory there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and I think it's also meant, the whole carbon credit system was meant as a Kickstarter for geographies where the energy transition wouldn't really take off as fast as in Europe, where we have massive subsidies, etc., and perhaps better infrastructure and whatnot. So I think this is a great example of where it could work, just really on a high level, because you have a really clear also what if it doesn't happen, the scenario, right? Then we're going to burn a really large load of gas. So I think the whole carbon credit system would be perfectly set up to fix this this issue.
What would you think? Thanks. Thank you, Boris. What do you think about the carbon border adjustment mechanism in Europe? I mean, will it impact the way you operate? Because from what I feel, what I see analysts talking, from what I see like steel companies talking, they wait for that market, and that market will be like, like the North Star for everyone. And do you have the same feeling or not? Do you feel it will like consume all other markets? So every market will benchmark itself against the CBAM?
It's a good question. It's a bit of a tough one. I think this is a really different level from what we do. So you have the European trading system that is for the large industrial players in Europe, the BMWs, et cetera. Tata Steel, that's an Indian company with presence in Europe. And then what we do, we're active on the voluntary carbon market. So that's completely free in that sense from any type of market maker. The market maker and the other thing that I just described is the European Commission, if I'm not mistaken, not the union, but the Commission. I think the concept is, I think it's quite good, because what it will generate is a lot more attention, a lot more also awareness with companies. Okay, where do we source, and what is the impact of that? And it becomes much more of a climate trade-off question. Not only just to focus. Well, it is, of course, it's always comes down to price, I think, for a lot of companies, but it just adds another stimulus for them to also consider buying domestically, and therefore, let's assume, emit less. But to be honest, this is just a really high level first thought. I haven't really got a really strong opinion about it yet, to be honest. I mean,
maybe then that's what makes it so exciting, because to my opinion, it would be like big, a sphere whose gravity would pull to its other markets. We will look at it. Okay, why in Europe on the CBAM, like in 2027, we will look at, okay, I can sell like a ton of CO2 for 120 euro. Why should I sell it like for 15 in the voluntary market? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it is. I don't have any opinion on that either at the moment, but it's definitely for me. It looks like it is the time for these voluntary markets will be really turbulent next few years. And so how do you look at this? How do you think you're going to tackle that? If you agree with me, first of all.
Yeah. So I think I do agree that the markets are going to be turbulent, but I see that in a positive sense, because I think the demand is going to increase. More and more companies, that's what you now also see, more the number of companies that use carbon offset is increasing, in fact. I think attention for the whole topic is also increasing. So that's a positive thing. Then I'm still quite in the dark on the demand side, and that's where it could become quite interesting. Will we be able to find enough high quality climate projects that we really believe in, that we can then support for our clients? And that is like looking into a glass ball. I really don't know the answer to that. But and the first part of your question is, I think, also just the point about the trading system, and also the border adjustment. I think now implementing that for the really larger industrial players is really a preset to also trickle down to the smaller companies. That's what you also see in the, for example, CSRD legislation that now directs companies of a certain size to report on their footprint, on their emissions. And what we now see already in the market, that smaller companies that are not obliged to adhere to this legislation are already themselves starting to also map their emissions and act upon that, because larger corporations are starting to demand that from the smaller ones. And I think that also there's a parallel with this whole border I forgot the name, the border tax that at first there's only large corporations going to be falling underneath that, but I think it's really soon going to also spur a movement among the smaller companies to be really aware of what we're doing in terms of carbon impact.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, we'll see how that plays out.
Exactly.
Yeah, we should be wrapping up soon. Just I think like 2 questions I'd like to ask you. So then you can have like a 5 minutes break before your next call. So first one, in your practice, how much outside help did you use as a company? Like, I mean, accelerators, mentors, consultants, someone who came in and helped you, or maybe some other kind of help which you found is useful. Like, I don't know, maybe it's the Dutch government helping out or EU government helping out somewhere.
We don't have a specific program like an accelerator or a mentor program that we're enrolled into, but we do often dive into new topics, for example, new markets, new features that we want to add somewhere, and then we invite friends of friends, and new friends to come and speak to us about the topic that they're knowledgeable about. And I think that's really. It's remarkable to see how many people just are willing to free up an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours just to talk to a growing company. Let's put it like that, about a topic that they care about. And we have often what we call knowledge sessions, where we just one of our teams just picks a topic that they feel strongly about, and then we invite an external speaker to also educate us about that a little bit. And then, of course, next to that, we have a pool of mentors that we sometimes meet with. So we have one mentor that advises us on commercial topics. There's one mentor that has more of a legal point of view. So, yeah.
Great. And then the second one is that, why I'm asking is because it's important for the other startups. I hope other startups will also watching this. Because this is a recording, they will watch this, and because they need that understanding, because they need all the help they can get. I mean, some may be in your area, some maybe not. Maybe they can look for something similar in their own environment. And I know from my personal experience that sometimes it's just, it's lying there, it's just in front of you, or it's in your phone book, but you do not think about it unless you see someone else doing that or telling you about it. So yes. That's the idea behind that question. And then the final one, what would you recommend, like a green tech startup who is just starting to grow up, what they should watch out for, what they should be careful about?
Yeah, I think the first thing comes to mind, and I think you'll find it in any book writing about startup advice, and I find it to be true. which is nail a niche. So pick something that seems to be working, and then do that one thing really, really well, and leave all like the adjacent products or services for a later stage. Don't spend any like a lot of time on things that do not give you the right energy or revenue. Really focus on one thing and kill that.
Okay, well, that certainly rings true with me.
Yeah.
I've been doing the corporate startups, and one of the hardest thing was to fight off all the different kind of ideas, add-ons that people would be piling onto you, and even yourself would be thinking of adding.
Okay. Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, Boris. Well, it was great to have you here. Thank you very much, and I wish you good luck to you and Regreener this year and the coming years, and to keep up changing the world for better.
Thanks a lot, Emin. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Boris. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Also, bye.